right now, only on Rogers Television.
Welcome back to 3D Dialogue. I'm Jesse Hirsh. The Mennonites are a Christian faith group that began in the 16th century. Currently, there are over 1 million members worldwide. Mennonite beliefs and practices vary widely, but following Jesus in daily life is a central value, along with the pursuit of peace. Menno Simons was an early prominent leader, and eventually the group became known as Mennonites because of his name. Joining me in studio to tell us more is Peter Hartman, a professional philosopher and internet organizer within the Mennonite Church. Thanks for coming in. Now, perhaps we could start by addressing what I think tends to be a popular conception of Mennonites as being not so much anti-technology, but rooted in very primitive ways, sort of the horse and buggy, as it were. But yet you yourself are an internet organizer. Perhaps you could enlighten us a little as to whether Mennonites, in fact, are embracing modern technology or not.
Well, yeah, that's a common conception, is that we're all horse and buggy like the Amish. And the Amish are related to us. In the 17th century in Europe, the Amish and the Mennonite broke on a subtle theological issue of shunning, whether you should ban somebody if they commit a sin. But then when we came to the New World, we sort of separated. And so the Amish decided not to adopt technology, and most Mennonites adopted technology. But there are old order Mennonites who still drive the horse and buggy. And in general, Mennonites have been agrarian. We're farmers, and so we tend to be more Luddite than most folk. But yeah, just recently we've started entering the information age, and I'm responsible for a Mennonite website that has brought the churches onto the internet with my organization. And so we have embraced the technology, and we're not Luddites completely.
Now, on that personal note, perhaps you could tell us a bit more about your own upbringing. I mean, were you born, I assume, in a Mennonite family? What was it like growing up as a Mennonite?
I grew up in, actually, my grandmother is Amish, and the Mennonites and Amish still live side by side. And I grew up on a farm, and I'm first generation higher education, and a lot of my friends are that way. We sort of talk about the Mennonite diaspora, and basically our grandparents or our parents lived on a farm, and then our parents and perhaps just us had educations. And so now we're moving into cities like Toronto and sort of spreading out, moving away from the farms, and presenting an interesting conflict for us, because before we never had to think about what our faith meant or how different we were from other people. And now, for example, the war, since we're a pacifist people, you meet other Christians, and it's surprising for us to see that they would advocate for war, or at least not intentionally get in the way of war efforts. And
as we mentioned in our intro, peacemaking or the pursuit of peace does seem to be very central in terms of the Mennonite faith. Can you perhaps elaborate on, more explicitly how peace activism or peace building has played a role within your community and within your life?
Yeah, peacemaking is deeply rooted in the Anabaptist, which is what Mennonites were, faith. In the Reformation, we decided to not bear arms at all. And so the Lutherans, the Catholics, the Calvinists, they were persecuting each other and us as well, but we wouldn't intentionally we took the turn the other cheek message very seriously. And as blossomed, the conscientious objector status in World War II was partly founded by Mennonites, just so we'd have a way of doing hospital work or something to avoid having to go to war. And contemporarily, there's the CPT, which is a Mennonite organization, or partly founded by Mennonites, and they're in the news recently. They are more active nonviolence. They get in the way. They go to trouble areas from Chiapas to Colombia, and they
engaging in like civil disobedience.
Civil disobedience. They get kicked out of countries. It's active nonviolence is what they call it. It's not quietism, but actively letting our values of peacemaking be heard. And
is it correct to assume that this type of activist politics is very normal within Mennonite circles and tends to be sort of a central tenet of the practice of the faith, as it were?
Pacifism is a central tenet. Active nonviolence, there's a spectrum. Just like there's a spectrum, we have horse and buggy Mennonites and then internet Mennonites. And so you have, I would consider the active part of the Mennonite church very liberal, just like any other church. But pacifism is all across the board. Most of the time it's sort of seen as quietism and just not going to war, living politely, living quietly. But there is a branch of the Mennonites who will do the peacemaking. What mainly the Mennonite Church does across the board is relief aid. There's this organization called Mennonite Central Committee, and they have, for our size, we're one of the biggest relief aid organizations in the world, all over Russia and China. And wherever there's a disaster, like a hurricane, Mennonites will go there. For example, my grandfather, a farmer, never left his farm except to go down to Nicaragua when there was a hurricane. He went down there 6 or 7 times. And a lot of old Mennonite farmers just hop in the bus and head down whenever there's a hurricane. And that's
just sort of heeding the call for relief.
Yeah, and just the aid and relief. And it has the effect, actually, of there are a lot of international Mennonites, Ethiopians. In fact, in Toronto, I was surprised because the two churches in Toronto are international Mennonites. Can't remember what was Ethiopian Mennonite or something, and because we don't really evangelize, but we go there for relief aid and build latrines, things like that.
It's more an implicit evangelization because you're doing such good deeds. People sort of clue in and say, hey, wow, that's really interesting, and learn more about the faith.
Yeah, it's witnessing or discipleship is what they like to call the term or whatever.
Now, explicitly, you've done some work on the internet in terms of mobilizing communities and congregations to go online and learn about how the internet can foster sort of the inter-community dialogue. Can you maybe elaborate on some of the challenges as well as the opportunities that you've faced in getting different Mennonite communities to go online and embrace this new technology?
Immense challenges, actually. The Mennonite Church is old-fashioned, very Luddite, I'd say more so than other denominations of Christians. And so, yeah, my boss and myself, we got a biggish grant to hook up all the churches. And so we designed a thing to allow them to share sermons and messages and things like this. And it's been a lot of pulling teeth to get the Mennonites to turn on their computers or buy a computer.
But there must be some receptivity of people saying, hey, there really is potential.
Oh, there are a lot. Amongst the colleges, there's a few Mennonite colleges around, and the sort of the liberal, the higher end ones are really excited about this, buzzing about this, because part of the problem with the Mennonites is we're so spread out, and we have horse and buggy and we have internet Mennonites, and so you have not much communication between the groups, and so this is a way of getting a common message to each other and rallying around common points and just getting voices heard from Kansas to Pennsylvania and like
to Toronto.
To Toronto, yes.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Peter, for coming in. It's been quite enlightening in terms of understanding more about the Mennonite faith and their practices. That was Peter Hartman, a Mennonite and professional philosopher. Next on 3D Dialogue, online dating and the desire to find a partner in your religion. Please stay tuned.
Call the Rogers Television Viewer Response Line at 1-800-939-7787 or visit our website with your comments.